Live from Dunkirk, New York, it's Revitalize Dunkirk. Welcome to our third program. I'm Valerie Champlin here with the president of Revitalize Dunkirk, Jim Fisher, and we have a special guest this evening. Jim, I'm going to turn it over to you to do the introduction.
Well, thank you, Valerie. Tonight we have Matthew Burke with us, who's the Community Development Planner with the City of Dunkirk. And he's going to talk tonight about the housing market study that the city recently completed. And he spoke a little bit about it at our last monthly meeting. So, Matt?
Great. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here. So this project we've been doing started back in August. The project was funded in part through a grant from LISC in the New York State Attorney General's office. And kind of the basis of the project was looking into vacant and distressed properties in communities across upstate New York and a lot of the country. Since the financial crisis, there's kind of been a backlog of these sorts of properties. So this project was intended to allow communities to start to address the issues surrounding these sorts of properties. So
some people refer to them as zombies.
Some people do. Yep. We've occasionally called it the Zombie Property Project. Exactly. So as I said, we started back in August. We've hired a consultant to kind of guide us through this process. We put a task force together of kind of community leaders, city staff, Revitalize Dunkirk members who've kind of helped inform the process. And first thing we did with this project is we did a housing study. We had volunteers go out property by property in the city, basically rate each property on a scale of 1 to 5 in terms of marketability. That kind of gave us some underlying data for this project.
What kinds of things were they looking at?
Really,
like the roof condition?
Superficial stuff. Yeah, exactly. Roof condition, landscaping. How's the paint? How's kind of the cosmetic condition of the house. So while this project started as sort of a vacant and distressed property focus, we've kind of broadened it to look at the city's housing market as a whole, because obviously the vacant and distressed properties are a part of kind of the larger housing market, which kind of informs everything else. So we did that housing study in the fall. This task force has been meeting regularly over the past number of months. We've kind of been analyzing the data, gathering other data, trying to get a really good picture of kind of what's going on at the city, or within the city and its housing market. And we recently finished up a report that kind of summarizes the data and our findings.
Great.
That we're going to be presenting at a public meeting on Tuesday, March 13th.
Oh, great.
At the incubator.
What time is that going to be?
6 to 8 p.m.
Okay.
At the Fredonia Incubator. Yeah, so we'll...
214 Central Avenue.
Thank you. I'm happy to provide kind of some initial takeaways from the project, but if folks are interested in kind of hearing more in depth and seeing this report that's kind of the product of our work, they should certainly come to that meeting.
What are in your preliminary findings, what are the highlights, if you will?
Sure. As I kind of presented a little bit at the Revitalize Dunkirk meeting, if we are looking at the city's housing market, there are large pockets of neighborhoods that are in really good shape, that are kind of house by house, block by block, really stable. There are some parts of the city, kind of in the periphery of downtown, that are struggling a little bit. You see kind of a higher proportion of these distressed properties, higher proportion of vacant properties, and then there's a wide swath of properties or kind of areas across the city that are kind of in between. They're kind of, they could go, they could go south, they could get better. They're kind of in this in between state right now. And for folks that are familiar with the city, that may seem familiar. That may kind of conform to what people see in the city on a day-to-day basis, but kind of seeing that data and kind of it was helpful to kind of see that data to kind of confirm I think what a lot of people kind of felt about this city.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Jim, you were at the last Revitalize Dunkirk meeting, and that's where Matt made a presentation to Revitalize Dunkirk at the monthly meeting. What was the reception by the members of Revitalize Dunkirk or members of the public who
Oh,
attended?
I thought it was a good, everybody was interested in it, and then there was a few that did help with the study,
Yeah.
and that were
Because
there
there
too.
are
And
more than 2 or 3 Revitalize Dunkirk members who helped walk around the neighborhoods and do the initial tallies or evaluations. right?
Absolutely. There's been Revitalize Dunkirk members both on this task force that's been meeting and kind of guiding the project,
Right.
and then some of those folks also were the ones out
Right,
doing
in the neighborhoods.
yeah,
right.
doing the housing survey itself. Yeah.
When the survey was happening in the neighborhoods, were there any neighbors who were, I won't say problematic, but more than curious or troubled by people walking around evaluating the housing stock?
Less than we might have guessed.
Good.
That was something we talked about kind of before our surveyors went out.
To prepare for that.
Exactly. If people
it
ask,
happened. Right.
if you have any issues,
I'm guessing that most community members who would see a person looking at a property and evaluate, this is just a guess.
yeah.
Neighbors would probably be glad to see someone paying attention to neglected properties or empty properties.
Yeah.
Is my guess.
Yeah, and we weren't
Unless
sure.
they're the owners.
Yeah, well, and we weren't sure what the reception would be,
Right.
and one of the ways we tried to kind of make it more visible and friendly was we had T-shirts that had the City of
Oh.
Dunkirk logo that said "volunteer" on the back.
That's a good idea.
And again, we had a letter from the mayor that kind of explained the project if people were curious.
Good.
I don't know if we needed to distribute any of those,
Good.
but again, people are more curious than anything
Right.
about.
So you mentioned that there's going to be that public meeting.
Correct.
And the date again is?
Tuesday, March 13th.
Okay. After that, what will happen? What does your timeline look like?
That's a great question. We are going to be sharing kind of some of the ongoing efforts that are going to spin out of this project at the meeting. We'll have we'll have some additional grant money to work
Good.
with, and we'll kind of hope to explain a little bit more about what we're looking to do with that at the meeting. We are. I'll share most of those revelations for the meeting. That's
Sure,
something
of
that
course,
we'll
of
want
course.
to talk about there.
Jim, do you have other questions?
I was just curious about that. Did the study look at like sidewalks or pavement or anything like that, or was it just mostly just the housing?
Really good question. That we did not look at streets or sidewalks or anything like that. It was kind of housing focused, and that was something that came up beforehand. I know some of our volunteers had asked about that, but we just kind of wanted to keep that focus narrowly on kind of housing specifically and kind of property by property.
But the people that were out on the hustings looking at the properties,
Mm-hmm.
they could only view it from the sidewalks, or
Correct.
they could not go around in the backyards.
Correct.
Right.
It was.
So it was. They did the best they could with.
Exactly, and kind of the consultants we've been working with, CZB, they're a planning firm that has a lot of experience in this arena and in other communities in New York, and their kind of methodology was kind of more of a market focus. That if someone were here thinking about purchasing a home and they walked down the street, what would they
Right.
see? And that was kind of the basis for the scoring for the
A street view, curb appeal.
Exactly. Yeah, take a look at a house for 10, 15 seconds, make note of kind of what we called green flags and red flags. Are there particularly positive details or particularly negative details, and kind of put those together to form the impression of the house.
And hopefully down the road there can be an emphasis on rehabilitation versus we need to knock this down, this
Yeah.
eyesore down.
And
Because as everyone knows, Dunkirk has a history of, unfortunately, trying to eliminate a problem by bulldozing the
Yeah.
problem. So it'd be great to see us take a different tactic,
Yeah.
I think.
Absolutely. And one of the things that's discussed in the report that CZB has put together for us is kind of a toolkit. What options do we have
Right.
in an environment where we don't have money to fix all the problems at once? Kind of
Right.
how do we think about strategizing, and what tools do we have at our disposal?
And also, I would imagine that you talk about how do we educate the homeowner, the property owner, that there may be funds available to rectify some problems.
Absolutely.
Because it would be great if we can educate people who might not be aware that
Yeah.
there are some possibilities for some assistance.
And that's certainly a piece of the puzzle as well.
Great.
And that's something we'll be doing out of this project, is kind of reaching out to some homeowners to say, here are some resources that are available if you needed them.
Good.
Yeah.
Now, are you more concerned with homeowners, or are you going to look at like rental property owners too? I mean, like landlords and.
Well,
Yeah.
whoever owns the property,
Right.
right?
Yeah, I would say that the project doesn't necessarily didn't focus on one or the other. I will say that a lot of the programs that the city has funded through its CDBG program or other sources of funding generally do focus on kind of homeowner-owned properties, but that's certainly not exclusively kind of what the focus should or will be. That in our data we saw that there are both rental-owned or kind of rental properties and owner-occupied properties that may have issues or have kind of residents that need assistance there.
Great. Well, we're so pleased you were our first official guest.
Well, I'm honored, and I appreciate you guys having me. And again, I hope
I hope you get a great turnout at the open public meeting, and a lot of people are there in a supportive way and a positive way.
We hope so. Yeah, and again, that's Tuesday, March 13th, 6 to 8 p.m. at the Fredonia Incubator. As many people as can show up is great, and we'd love to kind of continue this conversation about housing in the city.
All right, great, fantastic. Thank you, Matt.
Thank
We
you.
Thanks,
appreciate
Matt.
you being
Appreciate
here.
it.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to Revitalize Dunkirk, to our third show. We're welcoming in the month of March, and what we hope to do is every 2 to 3 weeks to tape another show, and it's viewed on locally in Dunkirk on Channel 12. And so look for us every 2 to 3 weeks, Jim, is that right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, and we're here partly just to, inform you about things that are going on with Revitalize Dunkirk, but we wouldn't be here and this show wouldn't be possible if it weren't for the great Gabriel Taylor, who's the production maven behind this whole show. He makes sure that we appear on the program regularly, that we appear on YouTube, and we're very thankful to Gabriel Taylor for all of his hard work and efforts. So thank you, Gabe.
Gabriel!
Yay! A round of applause. The next Revitalize Dunkirk meeting is scheduled for Thursday, March the 15th at 6:30, and that's held at the Fredonia
Technology Incubator.
Incubator.
It's a mouthful, but yeah.
That's right, at 214 Central Avenue in Dunkirk. And I might say that if you drive by the building, people probably think, well, where do I park if there's not enough parking on the street? There's ample parking in the back of the building. And we're hoping that we will have a guest speaker for the March meeting from the Development Office to give us an update on all that's happening. And there's a lot happening in the Development Department of the City of Dunkirk. So we hope you will join us at 6:30 on March the 15th. And since I mentioned the incubator, I thought it would be worthwhile mentioning how lucky we are in the city to have that incubator there on Central Avenue. I mean, SUNY Fredonia could have built the incubator anywhere, but it's in Dunkirk. So we're so fortunate that we have that fine facility. Not only is it incubating new businesses, but I can't tell you how many meetings are held in that space. Not only Revitalize Dunkirk, but many, many, many organizations use the facility for meetings, for art exhibits, what have you. So if you haven't visited the Fredonia Technology Incubator on Central Avenue, please pay it a visit, because there's always a receptionist there, and there's usually something happening in the art exhibit area. And don't feel that you have to be a member of Fredonia State or the college in any way. It's part of our community, and we're making very good use of it every month, and we have been for quite a while now. So we're so happy that we have the incubator in Dunkirk. Jim, I happened to be taking a drive yesterday, and I was just driving around the dock in Dunkirk, and I was struck by the number of people fishing on the dock yesterday. And then I read in today's Dunkirk Observer that there have been record numbers of people on the dock fishing. It was so wonderful to see. I mean, there were people of all ages. Have you been there lately?
No, I didn't make it down there this week.
Apparently, the salmon and the trout are congregating around the warm waters.
Yeah, I'm not a fisherman, but I guess something's happening.
I've never seen that many. There were well over 100 fishermen and fisherwomen on the dock yesterday.
I seen a lot of pictures on social media and stuff like that.
It was fantastic. It reminded me of way, way back when I was a little kid in Dunkirk. Do you remember, I know you're a lot younger than me, but do you remember the old fishing huts down on the lake?
Behind Loblaws, right?
Yeah.
Remember Loblaws?
Loblaws store, right? Very popular store. I miss their cheesecake to this day. It was so good. But anyway, there were fishing huts and shacks, fishing shacks. Mm-hmm. And when you were a little kid, you were always warned about, be careful around the fishing shacks, you know. But then what it reminded me of are all those fishing nets that used to be out drying on those big spindly devices. And I guess what was reminding me of that was not only seeing all the fishermen on the dock, but I happened to also catch the Dunkirk Then and Now exhibit, the art exhibit, at the incubator. And unfortunately, it's only on until March the 2nd. So tomorrow, which is Saturday. So if you haven't caught it, you won't have an opportunity. However, I have to say that it was fantastic, because what the person that put the show together, Diane Andrazik, the city historian, what she did was she took some old black and white photos, say of the corner where Ealer stands, and she took the photo, she took an old photo or an old postcard photo from the 1800s, and then she went out and she took a photo of today, that corner. And so the two are juxtaposed, one next to the other. And I probably saw fishing nets in something that I saw in a postcard or something.
Yeah, I think there was actually quite a few pictures.
Yeah, there were. And I really enjoyed
Two
the
roomfuls.
Two roomfuls.
Because I went through it about a month ago with a friend.
So it was
checked it all out.
well worth your time. So whenever you see an art exhibit mounted at the incubator, and that usually gets mentioned in the Observer, please take a point of going out and checking it out. This one was great because we're Revitalize Dunkirk, and so it made a lot of sense to take a look at the old and the new. But I was struck by some things, and I made some notes to myself, that, you know, there were great pictures of the Dunkirk and Fredonia trolley, and it was a trolley system that ran between the two, the city and the village. Fishing docks. There was the big opera house. And a lot of this, I didn't really realize that we had a big opera house right off Lakeshore Drive. Really fantastic
I believe it was
building.
up into the 1940s or 50s.
I don't know. Unfortunately,
like that.
A lot of these great old historic buildings met their demise because of fire.
Yeah, it seemed
Primarily.
there was a lot of fires.
Right. But the old Erie Hotel next to the tracks, of course, that was a big edifice. In the mid-1800s, I got this information from the exhibit. There were 52 passenger trains that stopped in Dunkirk daily. That's hard to believe.
Wow, that's...
Yeah. And then I saw a picture of, what was it? there was a large passenger steamer ship docked at a dock in Dunkirk, and the caption on it said that it docked. People would come in to make the rail connection with the railroad, since we were such a railroad hub, and that in the late 1800s there were 12 hotels in Dunkirk. Can you imagine? 12 hotels. I mean, so in the late 1800s, early 1900s, this was a booming place.
Yeah.
So I was really proud to see that exhibit and these great edifices.
And I think all of us that live in Dunkirk or grew up in Dunkirk and like that, we always like, to go back and revisit Dunkirk.
Well, we like new developments, but some of us also like the old.
Mm-hmm.
And we like to see the old restored and kept up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a shame that now so many new buildings that go up are dollar stores and cookie cutter boxes, and they don't have the grand finesse, they don't have the fenestrations, meaning the fancy stuff, and so gone are the days of great skilled people who did carvings and stonework and brickwork. And anyway, this exhibit just reminded me of all that. And the only thing that was missing, I have to say, of Dunkirk then and now, I didn't see one picture of Neptune in Washington Park or Neptune in front of the Brooks Locomotive Headquarters.
Right. Yeah, that's where it started out, right?
Yeah. So, as most people in Dunkirk know, Neptune was revitalized, Neptune was restored, but he now resides in the natatorium at SUNY Fredonia. And there are some people like me that would like to see Neptune in his rightful place in Dunkirk, New York. But anyway, That's another subject. Something else that being on the pier reminded me of was you, because when there's music on the pier every Thursday night in the summertime, Jim was fantastic about going down to the pier, and I give you a lot of credit. You went to a lot of these music on the pier events, and you had a purpose in mind, not just to enjoy the music, but why don't you talk a minute about the purpose of your visit?
Well, we had like a 5-question questionnaire survey that I tried to get people to answer the questions, and as many various different questions, but just to get, I guess you could say, the vibe, or what people thought of various things in the city of Dunkirk, and what they're what Dunkirk is to them, and
the positives of Dunkirk,
right.
The negatives of Dunkirk, but mostly the positive.
Right, and like I know, and it's good talking to just everybody, because you find out a lot of things, like how people enjoy Dunkirk because it's like the small hometown feel. It's not the big city. You can walk just about anywheres, pretty much, and
But it was a walkabout survey that you did. You didn't just sit at a card table and wait for people to come up to you. He walked around, and if somebody looked halfway friendly, I would imagine you approached them.
Well, some people, it was like, oh boy, here we go, but
anytime someone sees someone approaching them with a form,
yeah.
What is he selling?
Yeah, like, oh, we
a water filtration system.
And there was a few instances of people actually running past me, or like ducking around me, or whatever. But
I'm usually one of those people.
But the people that did talk to me and answer questions and like that, it was actually, you could feel the sense of community, or like, they were really interested in Dunkirk, and like that they had their reasons for liking Dunkirk and enjoying Dunkirk. So,
well, it was a nice way for Jim to introduce people on the pier to the fact that Revitalize Dunkirk exists too.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're very appreciative of him doing that.
That was actually one of our first, I guess you could call it, projects to promote Revitalize Dunkirk.
But it was all Jim, so I give him a lot of credit, because a lot of people don't have the ease with which to go up to complete strangers and approach them. So I give him a lot of credit. So thank you, Jim, for doing that.
Thank you.
And, you know, thinking about the historical Dunkirk and what we appreciate about the city, and thinking about Dunkirk then and now, and talking with Jim, Jim said, well, you know, I have some Cook's crates at home, and should we bring them to Revitalize Dunkirk? And I said, yeah, I think I have a Cook's tray. And too bad we don't have Cook's beer bottles, but that's what this is all about, just a little tidbit of things that we all have, little bits of historical Dunkirk probably in our homes. And if anyone has anything they'd like us to show on the show,
Yeah.
let us know. Again, we welcome your comments, either through Facebook or our website, or our post office box address is Post Office Box 107, Dunkirk, New York 14048.
And the website is revitalizedunkirk.com, and Facebook is...
You just go to Facebook and plug in Revitalize
right.
Dunkirk, New York.
Yeah.
And then you'll find us. So we like to showcase some historical things, and these are just things that we have at home. So I'm sure there's more out there, and we'll dig around in our coffers and come up with some other historical artifacts. We wish Cook's Brewery was still here. It would be fantastic, and wouldn't it be great if another brewery would come into town, because they're very popular these days.
Yeah.
You know, these
Microbreweries
are, you know, up on the new place on, it's called 5 and 20. They make whiskey, I believe.
Oh, really? So I didn't even know about that.
Yeah, it's up on Route 5 and 20. It's in Westfield. So I haven't been yet, but I know it's there, brand new building. But wouldn't it be great if we could revisit winemaking or beer making in the city of Dunkirk? I wanted to remind everyone, we've mentioned it during our other two programs, that in the summer months we sponsor the BYOC. And Jim, can you talk a little bit about BYOC, what it stands for and what it is?
Okay. Well, BYOC stands for Bring Your Own Chair, and basically you bring your chair, your favorite chair, to
lawn chair.
Yeah.
Or
beach
your
chair.
throne, or
well, you can bring
could
whatever
bring a
kind of
Barca
chair.
lounger if you want.
As long as you don't mind carrying it to the beach or the location.
I have this image of somebody with a big Barca lounger over there.
Or in Valerie's case, you come to the beach with your servants waving the fans, keeping you cool. As
Yes, of course, yes.
Like
Yes,
Cleopatra.
my butler and my maid they're fanning me at all times. Yes.
But we do the BYOCs, bring your own chairs, at various locations in the city. The Point, Wright Park, the Lighthouse. We tried Pangolin Field last year. But I think our two favorite locations are the Point and the Lighthouse so far. And the Lighthouse was another one that we tried for the first time
First
last
time, it was fantastic.
year. Yeah.
So we always publicize the dates of our BYOC, Bring Your Own Chair, in the newspaper. We, of course, put it on Facebook and our website, and we'll give you the dates again in the future. The first one will be in June. And don't forget, we're trying to launch a new, exciting program this summer, Bocce in the Park.
Yeah.
And we're hoping, if the stars align and we get the permissions that we need, and we dot our I's and cross our T's, to have our first official Bocce in the Park this June. And if it's successful, we'd like to have a tradition of Bocce in the Park. We're shooting for Washington Park. We don't have that tied down yet. But that's not to say that we couldn't have bocce in other parks too. So we keep your eyes open for that. Of course, that will also be advertised heavily. And speaking of bocce, I mentioned to Jim that bocce, B-O-C-C-E, is the Italian lawn game. But bocce, B-A-C-I, is an Italian word for kisses. So I came up with a few little bocce for Jim and his wife for you to
Well, thank
experience
you.
bocce.
Thank you.
And if we have our bocce ball extravaganzas, we'll also have some bocce candies there.
Bocce, bocce, baby!
And bocce candies are Italian. They're made in Italy. So we will have those present as well. I think with that, Jim, do you have anything else that you wanted to talk about tonight?
Not really. I was just going to mention about the BYLCs too. That coming to the sunsets and watching the sunsets on beautiful Lake Erie. There's some spectacular sunsets that.
There are, and we have had a sunset picture contest in the past.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we've given a prize out. I think we gave a gift certificate to Tim Hortons or something like
Yeah,
that,
I
right?
think that's what it is.
So keep your eyes open for that too.
Because we try to, we want to get people out there to the point or the lighthouse and like that. And at the lighthouse, again, this year we'll probably have like a discounted tour of the lighthouse itself up in the tower, and so you can see Dunkirk from a different point of view, I guess you'd call it.
And don't forget, we're hoping for a bonfire.
Oh, yes. As we say,
Bonfire!
That's right. Which was a huge hit last year. That was the first bonfire that we had. Luckily, we worked in tandem. Jim worked in tandem with the city of Dunkirk and all the folks with
and that's what we're doing again this year.
DPW and the fire department. And so it's a safe bonfire. It's not just crazy people setting fire to.
And we don't go around the bonfire in grass skirts. And
No, but we could.
Yeah, if that's what you want, that's what we'll do.
That's right. So with that, we're going to say good night and safe travels, and we're hoping to get home before the snow flies tonight. And
Yeah, it's supposed to snow tonight and tomorrow morning. Oh.
oh well, March is coming in like a lion. Only 20 more days till the spring
Yes.
begins. And we hope to see you for our next program, and we are going to be taping something in 2 to 3 weeks, we hope. So stay tuned and join us again for Revitalize Dunkirk. Thanks, everybody.